So it's been 22 years. Anyone born on or about September 11th could potentially be through college or about to wrap up this year, and that hit me and struck me and moved me to make a video about September 11th. I wasn't there. I wasn't old enough to really comprehend what it meant, but as I get older, I find out more and more, or think more and more about how it completely shaped who I am today. And it didn't make me who I am today, but it's been a prevailing force in my life since it happened. Every generation has something in their life that steers them, that is some prevailing force that's the winds of change or influences or works its way, permeates everything in their life. And I think for millennials, people kind of bash millennials a bunch, but we've been through a lot. And this isn't a video whining about being a millennial, but this is just a video where I want to share some things, some thoughts on something that happened 22 years ago. And just like the title said, it's been 22 years now since September 11th, 2001. I mean, it's even crazier as someone who was born in the 80s there are people that I work with now that were born in 2000 or are younger or after, and that blows my mind. I want to talk about my story, and I was too young to do anything about it, but I'm old enough to remember everything about it. I was in middle school. We were taking our state standardized tests, and I remember to this day now, and I don't know if it was hindsight or what, but I walked in and it was an absolutely perfectly clear sky. It was a beautiful September day going into school that day. The sky was completely clear. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful morning. The temperature was perfect. The sky was clear. The blue in the sky was just absolutely, what would you expect for a perfect September day, even where I was in Indiana. We got into school and we were doing everything that we normally do, and we were working on some state standardized tests, and our teacher got a phone call, went into another room, and then came back and turned the TV on and said, "Hey guys, I'm gonna leave this on. Something bad happened in New York." And I just remember that rest of the day being absolutely crazy. I remember everything about it. I was wearing a green Aeropostale shirt for that day, which if you can think back to what you were wearing in middle school, I challenge you to remember that. But I had cargo shorts on as I did most days, khaki cargo shorts, and a green Aeropostale shirt. And yeah, we got some stuff done, but every class we wanted to watch what was going on. And it was weird because some teachers would let us watch it, and at some point, I think the school came up with something that said, "Hey, don't watch it." But every now and again, we didn't have cell phones at the time, right? So this was 2001. Internet was there. CD-ROM was kind of newish. We didn't have smartphones. Internet was not on our phone anywhere. I mean, there were phones out, but they were like the big Zach Morris phones or the Nokia phones, like the bricks. Razor Flip may have been coming out too. Like, that was pretty cutting edge at the time. No Blackberries, no iPhones, nothing. So all of our news came from the radio or on the TV. And yeah, everything stopped. There were no TV shows on. Everybody was showing, like, all the stations were pretty much covering this. And it was crazy to see kind of things unfold because we weren't watching it in real time all the time because, again, some teachers would not let us watch it. But I remember in one class we saw the first hit. We couldn't watch it in the second class, and in the middle of the day we got someone to turn it on for us, and that was after the second plane had hit. And then somewhere about late afternoon, middle of the day, mid-morning if you will, we were watching, and then all of a sudden they broke into that the Pentagon had been hit, and then we had to leave class and we got into another class, and it just kind of spiraled, and you'd get it in little segments, and it was like really memorable in a bad way that things progressively got worse. We didn't know what was going on, and we would just see headlines that this building was hit, this building was hit, this one collapsed, that one collapsed. And I watched in real time one class as the buildings dropped, which are pretty crazy. But then later in the day, we found out about the Pentagon. We found out about the flight that crash landed in the field in Pennsylvania. I mean, we found out about all that. And by the end of the day, it was crazy. Even as middle schoolers, we just did not know what to expect. I mean, up until that point, there was really nothing that bad happened in life that you were aware of. I mean, I remember some things like Desert Storm, O.J. Simpson being crazy, the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember hearing some stuff about the first World Trade bombing. Like, you remember those things, but to like be in this pivotal moment in history, and I wasn't even aware that the internet was a thing, right? Like, to be honest with you, in middle schools in 2001, where I was at, like, internet really wasn't a thing. We were doing research online. We went to the library. Like, we did some stuff. We played like Oregon Trail, but right, we weren't going to the computer to do searches. Like, no Wikipedia, no YouTube, nothing. Like, this stuff wasn't built yet, right? So again, like, to get all of your information from the TV and just get little snippets, it was really overwhelming. And I'm not reading a newspaper in middle school, so it was like really crazy to get all of these things there, and this in like little snippets. It just was really, really, really overwhelming. But I remember moving from class to class, and I don't really remember the classes where we weren't allowed to watch it. And I'm really grateful for the teachers that let us watch it. It was. I'm glad I got to watch it. I'm sad that it happened, obviously, but I'm glad I lived through it because I'll remember it and be able to explain it later on in life. And, you know, if something's going to happen in your lifetime, I want to be there for it and be aware of it. But yeah, the big thing is what we're going to do about it. And I remember a ton of people signing up for the military, and it was something that I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And that was a really weird place in my life too, because I really wanted to join. I wanted to do a bunch of stuff because that was like the next thing. We're going to war. We're going to go find these guys. We're going to fight. They're going to invade us. Like, we thought, we weren't sure if it was a terrorist. We didn't know who it was. We had no idea about Bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, or any of these things. At that moment in history, it was, you thought we were under attack from another country. Like, we were going to get invaded. It's going to be like, you know, go Wolverines, right? Red October. Red Dawn stuff. And I've only really experienced this one other time in my life when I was in Hawaii, actually, and I got that weird ICBM warning on your phone. I'll share that some other time. It was a crazy story. But for a brief couple of minutes, right, until we learned anything else about it, this was the only news that you could act on, and it was like earth-shattering, changing news. If you've ever gotten a warning on your phone that an ICBM was inbound and you had to take cover, it was crazy. And especially after 9/11, I feel like you just kind of accept it and deal with it. But yeah. Everyone was thinking a lot about whether to join the military, and I joined later in life. I was kind of figuring some things out, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, and it took me a long time. And what's weird is it's crazy how decisions can change things. I graduated high school 2006, something like that, mid-2000s, 2006. And, you know, if you look at a lot of the big military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, like, it would have been crazy to join up. And I really wanted to join the Marines at the time, and it was crazy. I joined the Army later on, but it's really crazy to think about where you'd be if you had done that. You know, like, how would my life be different if I was in Iraq in 2007, 2008, 2009, or 10, or even Afghanistan, any of these places in these years. It would have been crazy to think about how my life would be different if I had been in these units at that time. Later in life, through college and things, I joined and ended up commissioning and being in the Army, and obviously being part of, or being there, seeing 9/11, you definitely want to go get even. But I was really interested and excited after I joined that, like, but by then it was kind of too late. And I was on slated, we were on ramped for 2 deployments that got canceled. 2011 to 13 was a really hard time. It was well after the 2008 financial crash, which happened during my college career. So yeah, that's my biggest regret, is I didn't necessarily get to go fight terrorism directly. Grateful I didn't lose any friends that I was serving with. I've lost other people through the Army, and in fact, all the soldiers I've commanded, I've lost a lot. Suicide was probably the number one killer for the people that I worked with, and big killers there, but I digress. So if, you know, take care of your buddies. So anyway, I joined, didn't get any combat missions, got some other cool missions, was really grateful for that time. But that whole process, like, me joining the military at the time was really predicated on what happened with the events of 9/11, and then working my way through college and then commissioning at the end. I wouldn't probably have done that if 9/11 wouldn't have happened. I mean, it really wasn't a thing, and the world was so different before 2001. In fact, the first time I flew was in July of 2001, and security, like, that was the only time I flew before TSA was a thing. And it's crazy to see how much the world has changed in my lifetime in 3+ decades, with the internet coming out, cell phones, smartphones, the 2008 crash, the dot-com bubble, the 2013 stuff, COVID, you name it. Tons of stuff happening. It's crazy. But it's also really interesting to hear other people's stories. And I want to tell a story. I'm going to tell it on this other person's anonymity. I've heard a story of a person that I worked with, and what's crazy is they were supposed to be at the Pentagon the day that they, and this person doesn't tell anybody really this story much, but it was crazy, and grateful for this person, but they have to live with obviously all the memories of that day. But they were supposed to be at the Pentagon, and they normally worked at the Pentagon that day. And a month before 9/11 happened, they actually got moved to an off-site place. And had they been at the Pentagon that day, the flight that hit the Pentagon would have gone through their desk. Like, literally center of it, their floor, right across their desk. And they told me about this, and I was able to go to the 9/11 museum, and sure enough, one of their names is on that roster in the military section, where they're, it's right there. It's crazy to me to meet people like that, and imagine knowing that, had you been at the appropriate location, you don't know. And they said that 1 or 2 people survived on that floor that were there that day. But a lot of people didn't, that were working in office, and it's crazy to hear more and more stories like that. And if you look online, if you look on Netflix or YouTube or Nat Geo, I mean, there's tons of these stories coming out, but it's crazy to me to hear about these people's story and just think about how many lives that changed. It changed the whole world. Like, even if you weren't there, right, from my perspective, just living through it changed me. But then from other people's perspective, I mean, imagine, a sick day. If you had taken a sick day that day, I mean, it's just crazy. And it is interesting to see things fade, and you see a lot of people say never forget. And I'm assuming this is kind of like how the Pearl Harbor folks that lived through that or were around after that happened, eventually it just becomes a memorial. And if you haven't gone to the memorial in New York City, I highly suggest that you check that out. I mean, there's tons of stuff there to look at. There's the wall, there's the foundation. It's insane. I want to go back again, but it was really, to me, it was still something that only happened on the news, and I didn't see it in real life. But to go there and see everything, it was good closure for me and opening up the next chapter. Obviously, my heart goes out to everyone whose family were affected that day directly, and obviously all the service members and people in conjunction with the military that have lost their lives during that time, and then obviously all the families who have been affected by that, whether that's through the disability of a spouse or the loss of a spouse, family member, you name it. It's changed the world. And it's crazy that I lived to see that, and it's just amazing how you don't know how your choices or decisions you make, or things as a kid especially, how things change throughout time and how things matter or don't matter.